studying. Okay.
How do you conduct your work now? Because the piece that you're articulating, the context and the perspective that you're bringing to the understanding of this from your many years of experience at the high levels, how are you doing your work today? How do you get funding? How do you proceed?
That's usually because I'm retired. Up to retirement, I always had some funding. I was at the Swedish National Research Council having a personal position there. And nowadays, after retirement, I have no funding. I have absolutely zero, and that makes some problem. But because I am very frequently invited to, then I use the invitation and then I stick out into the field and do some work too. But yes, that's a problem. But I try to overcome it in different ways. Then sometimes I give lectures and I get some extra money and then I use it for the field studies.
Is it true that if you're in research and you're a scientist, that you really have to have large funding in order to do the proper work that you're doing? And if you don't have it, basically you're out of doing your life's work.
No, I don't think so, because I used to say when I was quarreling with people here in Sweden that those who have the money, they have no ideas. And those who have the ideas usually have no money, or at least they have too little, because they are problematic things because they come with novelties.
Yes.
But being a scientist, like an author or painter, you cannot close them. I mean, you have to work even if the circumstances are complicated. So you can never ever stop a searching scientist. A careeristic scientist, maybe that they are interested in a career, but for those who are searching, it doesn't really matter because you cannot control. You are only interested in trying to understand and to what is going on and to prove that. And you can also open all the time for changes and seeing something new. Yeah.
That was beautifully put. One of the complexities about now looking into climate change for most of us is that once you've read the, quote, official book in Inconvenient Truth, which really opened the door to tying us all into these particular things that were going to happen, a lot of us who read the book internalized that information as total fact. And so now when we look back, as the other parts of the science float to the top, right?
Yep.
And we now start to bring introspection into this rather than blind faith, it's really disconcerting.
Yes.
It's very disconcerting.
I completely agree. That is
very difficult.
That's a tragic. And I was all the way worried about this. There are two things in it that one should be able to trust scientists. But this is meaning that you should have free scientists. There's a difference between free scientists or loyal scientists. And that's, I say, why did 33 people became the author in sea level, on the sea level chapter? None of them have had any prior work in sea level changes. They were put there because they were loyal, not because they knew sea level. And the same goes in many of the other chapters. So that's a major drawback for sure. But then the other thing, if we come, and we are in Sweden, we always talk about democracy. And democracy is really that everyone should be able to evaluate information. And then you can evaluate in different ways, but the information should be the true thing. And then you are able to judge it. But if this is not true, the information you get, all this is just falling apart. And that's really tragic. But that's, for me, which shouldn't be this dialectic between computer games and field observation. But if you have field observation, it's always, so to say, true. You cannot fiddle with the field data. You can interpret it differently. And that's okay, because this is, scientists can't do that. But The more you should have training, you should have learn about it. You should know what you are looking for, and if everything looks good, you look even more to see if there is anything which you have done wrong. If you find beautiful in one or two islands, make another 10 islands in order to be real sure. But this is a field evidence. But the other thing has destroyed it, yes. And those people like Al Gore has really destroyed science, yes. But those who subscribe with them, many scientists did the same. But they asked me at the meeting in London, do you think argument can change? I said, no, I don't think so. I think only the observational truth, when they can see that temperature is not going up any longer, sea is not rising, and so on, then the glaciers are not melting. Finally, they catch up with the story, and then it falls apart. And that's where we are now. It starts to catch up with them. Reality starts to catch up, and then it falls apart. They also asked me in the beginning of the 2000, prepare, document what we are going to do in 2012 when the Kyoto Protocol is being renewed. I said, at that time we probably have realized it. So the ship is sinking, and the rats are starting to leave the sinking ship. So maybe we should take care of about them instead, in order to put them in the right place. So this was foreseen, but it was in some way. I was also in Copenhagen. We had an alternative meeting, very wonderful and exceptionally good. And even who I worked so much in it, it was disciplines. Yeah, I know that it was bad, but I had no idea that it was that bad. So you also continue to learning. But I was of course a little amused where Greenpeace or what it was have taken out a polar bear in ice and put it on the marketplace, and it was supposed to melt during the conference. But then it became so deadly cold, so it didn't melt. It was freezing instead. So then they took away the polar bear and dropped it in the sea or whatever they did.
Let me ask you this. How do your colleagues who specialize in the same thing that you do, what is their perspective? Is it the same as yours, similar as yours? Are you all upset because you see the same stuff?
Thank you for this. It's a good question, because that is one of the problems. Maybe people are very clever, people understand very much, but in order to leave, so to say, your writings or your lecturing or whatever you are doing and go into the debate, it takes a lot of time, energy, efforts, and some people don't have either the skill, the courage, or the time. So they take the easiest way. They are silent. But we shouldn't have that. So the question you asked, how about my colleagues? So I think about 80 earlier, when I was president of the Commission on Silver Change and Coastal Evolution, I think it was I had no one disagreeing with it in our context. It was just, if any rise is so little that we don't need to bother about it. Now, because its funding has come into it, maybe a little more are interesting in that, but it's still a minority. The sea level community, I think surely 80% are not at all subscribing to IPCC.
How big is the sea level community internationally? Like how many people?
I think it's about 400 people actually working on it. We had in my commission, we had about, I think it was 400, but not to exaggerate, I says 300-400. But I'm pretty sure that it was 400. I have
wow.
I have it somewhere in the computer.
That's a very, very small, dedicated niche, isn't it?
It is, but on the other hand, they were devoted just to look at the sea.
Right, that's what I was saying, dedicated.
Dedicated.
Yes. So,
and how many of IPCC have to measure it? It's 2-3 persons which measure this computer. There's very, very few. So And of course, then they review it and they write the articles. But those who actually are telling it, those who are fiddling with a tide gauge